How you guys doing today? And welcome back to Book of Hebreo. And today we gotta talk about Tony Ferguson. Can Tony Ferguson, the boogeyman, beat Khabib Nurmagomedov? Coming out on an impressive win against Donald Cerrone and Anthony Pettis with a TKO, Tony Ferguson won 12 straight wins in MMA since 2012. According to Joe Rogan, an MMA analyst, Tony Ferguson will be the toughest fight of Khabib's career. Can a tenacious fighter such as Tony Ferguson beat the undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov? With this main event coming up, let's take a look back of Tony Ferguson's life and career. Anthony Armand Tony Ferguson was born in Oxnard, California on February 12, 1984. The last name Ferguson comes from his stepfather, a Scottish American. He grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, and attended Muskegon Catholic Central High School. At a young age, he was exposed to multiple sports. He played football, baseball, and wrestling. Tony started as a defensive back for his school. They won the 2000 Division VIII State Football Championship without the former NFL player Ravel Martin, who graduated in the year prior. He was also one of the best wrestlers and received All-State Selection Award in wrestling 3 times. Once in the 145 division in 2000 and twice at the 152-pound division in 2001 and 2002. After high school, Tony Ferguson attended Central Michigan University before transferring to Grand Valley State University. Tony had an impressive wrestling tenure in Grand Valley State Lakers. In 2006, he won the National Collegiate Wrestling Association Championship in the 165 division and was twice All-American for Grand Valley State Lakers. After college, he moved to California with his extended family and tried working as a bartender or as a bouncer for restaurants. According to Tony in MMA Interviews.tv, he was bartending one night and a random guy noticed his ear and approached him. This random guy gave him his business card and invited Tony to train young guys on their wrestling moves. Tony went to the gym, and since then he committed himself as an MMA fighter. He began his career in 2008 on a few MMA fights in California. He recorded 10 wins and 2 losses before joining The Ultimate Fighter, a reality TV series of UFC. In the show's 13th season, he competed as a welterweight on The Ultimate Fighter team, Team Lesnar versus Team Dos Santos. He defeated Justin Edwards, Ryan McGilvray, and Chuck O'Neal. Ferguson made his UFC debut at the Ultimate Fighter 13th season's finale against Ramsey Nijem. He knocked out Nijem in the first round and earned himself an UFC contract and knockout of the night bonus. On September 24, 2011, Tony faced Aaron Riley at UFC 135. Both fighters were aggressive in the beginning of the fight until Tony landed a left uppercut to Aaron's face. Tony broke Aaron's jaw and the fight ended with a technical knockout. This started the exciting career of Tony Ferguson, winning 9 out of 10 fights. On July 13, 2016, Tony fought Lando Vannata. Tony was highly favored against Lando Vannata. However, with 1 minute and 8 seconds left in the first round, Lando kicked Tony in the head that almost knocked him out. Lando almost beat and upset his highly favored opponent. Unfortunately for Lando, Tony's resilience kept him fighting and eventually found Lando's weakness, which is his stamina. In the second round, Lando was tired and Tony took advantage of it and ended the fight with a chokehold submission. Yves Edwards, a former MMA fighter, mentioned in Joe Rogan Experience podcast, Tony is that guy that never goes away, and as soon as you turn around, he's ready to kill you. Tony's next opponent was the former champion Rafael dos Anjos. He dominated the fight and landed more hits against Rafael. Judges scored in favor of Tony, and he won by unanimous decision. This earned him a fight for the interim UFC Lightweight Championship. His next challenger was Kevin Lee. There were heated verbal exchange between the two fighters prior to the fight. Tony was in trouble in the first round of the match. Kevin Lee was on top of Tony and dropped elbow after elbow. Tony was saved by the bell in the first round. Once again, Tony's opponent was getting tired and he took advantage of it. He beat Kevin Lee in a triangle chokehold submission. On October 7, 2017 at UFC 216, Tony became the new interim UFC lightweight champion. The rivalry was initially set on December 11, 2015 at the Ultimate Fighter 22 finale. Tony Ferguson's record at that time was 19 wins and 3 losses, while Khabib Nurmagomedov was undefeated with 22 wins and 0 losses. The two exciting fighters were ready for the main event. Sadly, an unexpected rib injury to Khabib postponed the match. Tony would still fight, but it was against Edson Barboza. He defeated Edson with second round chokehold submission. Another match was scheduled on April 16, 2016, but this time, Tony was sidelined to fight due to blood or fluid in his lungs. The fight was rescheduled to March 4, 2017, but Khabib was hospitalized due to weight management medical issues. Khabib and his team decided to withdraw from the fight. Khabib and Tony tried again for the 4th time to make this fight happen. The fight was arranged on April 7, 2018. Sadly, a freak accident happened to Tony when he tripped and tore his ligaments on his knee. Tony was stripped away of his interim UFC lightweight title because he was unhealthy to fight. Instead, Khabib dismantled Al Iaquinta and won the UFC lightweight title. Tony went through rehab with his knee and returned after just 6 months. Both Tony and Khabib were scheduled to fight on October 6, 2018, but not against each other. Tony beat the exciting Anthony Pettis via technical knockout. Khabib also beat the notorious Conor McGregor with a controversial brawl at the end of the fight. Tony's next contender was a finisher artist, Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone had the most finishes in UFC history, which is 16. His fights would either end with a knockout, technical knockout, or a submission. On June 8, 2019, at the UFC 238, Tony beat Donald due to doctor stoppage. MMA doctor realized Donald Cerrone's eyes were so swollen and unfit to fight. At the post-fight interview, Tony mentioned that he deserved the title fight. His wish was granted, and his fight will be held on April 18, 2020 against Khabib. According to Josh Thompson, a former fighter and MMA analyst, he mentioned Tony is the kind of fighter who doesn't care where the fight goes and changes the dynamics of fighters' approach. An aggressive fighter, he will do anything to win the fight. He demolished his last 7 fighters where he basically ruined every single fighter's face. Edson Barboza, a former opponent of Khabib and Tony, mentioned Tony has a better chance to win because he is a better striker or a boxer than Khabib. With the UFC lightweight title, Tony is the closest fighter to beat Khabib in the octagon cage. Perhaps this fight could be the most exciting fight of the year. Tony Ferguson is the boogeyman of Khabib Nurmagomedov.